What if I told you that the most influential sci-fi films of the 1960s weren't list of all-time list? Forget the overexposed blockbusters. We're digging up the movies that actually changed the game, then quietly vanished into the background. Did you ever wonder which lost gems inspired your favorite filmmakers or planted the seeds for today's wildest sci-fi ideas? Buckle up. Some of these films predicted our modern nightmares with chilling accuracy, but you've probably never heard half their names. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, 1964. Let's set the record straight. Before Hollywood sent Matt Damon to Mars with potatoes, Robinson Crusoe on Mars had already mapped out survival on the red planet. Think being marooned on a desert island is tough? Try doing it on a hostile planet with nothing but a monkey and a malfunctioning oxygen supply. Director Byron Haskin didn't have CGI or glossy sound stages. He had Death Valley, temperatures over 100 degrees, and a vision that was decades ahead of its time. NASA even consulted on the script, making sure astronaut Kit Draper's struggles with water, shelter, and oxygen had real-world science behind them. Paul Manti, sweating it out inside a suffocating spacesuit, gave the performance of his life while clambering over orange-tinted rocks. The film's version of extracting oxygen from Martian rocks? Years later, NASA actually considered that technique for real Mars missions. No joke. The effects are all practical. Rovers that actually worked, alien ships you could touch, a monkey that upstages half the human cast. When it released, critics shrugged it off as a kid's matinee, but astronauts saw the value. Apollo 12's commander reportedly screened it during training as a cautionary tale in what not to do. Over time, its reputation grew. Cult status, respect from real scientists, and a long shadow stretching over every man alone on Mars story since. Forget the hype. This is the blueprint for realistic space survival on screen. First Men in the Moon, 1964. Victorian gentlemen landing on the moon sounds like pure fantasy, but First Men in the Moon dares to ask, what if the British Empire got there first? Adapted from H.G. Wells' classic and powered by the unstoppable magic of Ray Harryhausen's stop-motion monsters, this isn't just a space adventure. It's an alternate history fever dream. The film opens with Apollo astronauts discovering a tattered Union Jack already planted in lunar soil, sparking a wild flashback to 1899, anti-gravity paint, and the kind of brass spaceship you wish actually existed. But it's the creatures that steal the show. Harryhausen's moon monsters, giant shuffling bug-like things living beneath the surface, are still more convincing than some modern CGI. Each twitch, each glistening shell, was crafted by hand, frame, by painstaking frame. Directors today call that level of artistry impossible. James Cameron literally cited these bioluminescent caverns as inspiration for Avatar. This film didn't get the recognition it deserved on release. Critics dismissed it as a kiddie spectacle, missing how it practically invented the first contact narrative. That playful British wit overlays a genuinely eerie story about exploration and the cost of curiosity. Shot on a shoestring by today's standards, it still dazzles. The plot is imaginative, the visuals surreal, and the influence is everywhere once you start looking. First Men in the Moon quietly taught filmmakers how to make a world feel truly alien, even if you only had fog machines and a wild imagination. Quatermass in the Pit, 1967. Picture this. Workers dig up a buried spaceship in London subway. Inside, fossilized Martian creatures and a secret that rewrites human history. Welcome to Quatermass and the Pit, the film that turns sci-fi into a feverish blend of horror, ancient aliens, and mass hysteria. It's the rare genre movie that asks, what if everything we know about our origins is a lie? This British chiller is all atmosphere, gritty realism on the streets, then wild supernatural chaos beneath the city. The Martian revelation triggers psychic outbreaks and a spectral giant looming over London, all done with double exposures and practical effects. No computers, just raw ingenuity. The film's budget was tiny, but director Roy Ward Baker squeezed out moments that still give viewers chills. Critics at the time thought it was too scary for cinema. That's a compliment in hindsight. Its themes, alien intervention, collective memory, the roots of evil, predated bestsellers like Chariots of the Gods, and inspired everything from Indiana Jones to Prince of Darkness. John Carpenter openly cited it as a key influence. It's been called the most unsettling British sci-fi horror of its era, and its ancient astronauts premise became the DNA of 1,000 later stories. If you want to see how a low-budget British film could shake up both science fiction and horror, this is your ticket. Fantastic Voyage 1966. You think shrinking down and cruising the bloodstream is just a cartoon thing? Fantastic Voyage did it first, and with style. This isn't just the origin of the miniaturized heroes trope. It's a visual spectacle that stunned audiences and changed the way movies approach the human body as a frontier. The plot? Scientists race to save a diplomat by shrinking a submarine and its crew to microscopic size, injecting them into his bloodstream. They dodge white blood cells, steer past pulsating heart walls, and face a deadly deadline before they expand and explode. The special effects were jaw-dropping for the time. Set designers built enormous arteries and brains using thousands of gallons of red-tinted liquid pumped through plastic tubes. Hollywood noticed. Fantastic Voyage took home 2 Academy Awards, and the visuals inspired everything from medical illustrations to future blockbusters like Inner Space. Even Isaac Asimov got involved, writing the novel version and correcting the film's science along the way. But this isn't just spectacle. The movie's sense of urgency, beat the clock, or face disaster became a staple of sci-fi thrillers. Clips from the film were even used in med schools to teach circulatory anatomy. While the plot's Cold War undertones might feel dated, the imaginative visuals and high-stakes adventure hold up. If you want to see how far practical effects can take you, this is the film that opened the doors to inner space. The Day the Earth Caught Fire, 1961. Ready for a dose of pure apocalypse? The Day the Earth Caught Fire isn't just another disaster flick. It's a scalding, razor-sharp vision of how humanity could scorch itself out of existence and maybe never see it coming. Forget the monsters and ray guns. Here, the villain is us, our own reckless ambition. The story launches with a bang. The United States and Soviet Union both set off nuclear tests so powerful they tilt the very axis of the Earth. Suddenly, the planet is careening toward the sun and every living thing is on borrowed time. But what makes this film a classic isn't just the concept, it's the boots-on-the-ground storytelling. Instead of generals or politicians, we follow a pack of grizzled London newspaper reporters, fighting deadlines as fiercely as they battle the global meltdown. These aren't Hollywood heroes. They're chain-smoking cynics chasing rumors while the city broils in record-breaking heat. Director Val Guest shot right inside real Fleet Street offices, filled the cast with actual journalists, and spray-painted famous landmarks for maximum impact. The visuals are haunting: yellowed skies, dry riverbeds, and scorched concrete everywhere you look. And then there's the ending. As humanity hangs in the balance, the film prints 2 headlines, one declaring "World Saved," the other "World Doomed." But the camera never shows us which goes to press. Audiences were left guessing, arguing, and coming back for more, convinced they'd missed the answer. In an era obsessed with space invaders, The Day the Earth Caught Fire dares to make us fear our own choices. No alien invasions, just a future we might really bring about. X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes, 1963 USA. Ever wanted superpowers? Be careful what you wish for. X. The Man with the X-Ray Eyes is Roger Corman's unforgettable trip into the dark side of genius, a movie that dares to ask, what if seeing everything was actually a curse? Ray Milland stars as Dr. Xavier, a scientist so driven by curiosity that he invents eye drops to give himself X-ray vision. At first, it's medical marvel territory. Imagine being able to diagnose disease just by looking straight through flesh and bone. But Corman doesn't let you get comfortable. Xavier's gift keeps growing. He starts seeing through walls, through matter, even through people's secrets. The lines between blessing and curse blur fast. Corman was the wizard of doing more with less. Without Hollywood budgets, he used painted models, colored filters, and improvised prisms to deliver trippy, mind-bending visuals. Ray Milland spent scenes half-blind, sporting custom contact lenses that made his eyes as unnerving as his power. The film's suspense ratchets up as Xavier loses his grip, unable to stop peering deeper, terrified by what waits beneath the surface of the world. Legend has it that Corman's original ending was even darker, with Xavier screaming about what he saw beyond reality. Studio execs forced a safer finish, but that only made the film's last moments more haunting. X isn't just a sci-fi scarefest, it's a warning about pushing too far, about the price of seeing what's never meant to be seen. Forget superhero wish fulfillment. This is the story that makes you think twice about wanting powers. Sometimes the scariest discoveries are the ones you can't ever unsee. The Last Man on Earth, 1964. Before zombies dominated every streaming platform, there was The Last Man on Earth. Vincent Price, in one of his most haunting performances, plays Dr. Robert Morgan, the lone survivor of a global plague, barricaded inside his home by night and hunting for answers by day. The world outside, stalking mindless creatures that used to be human, now lurking in the shadows. Shot in bleak black and white across desolate Roman locations, the film oozes isolation and dread. Every empty street is a reminder of what's lost. The tension builds as Morgan methodically stakes the infected, tries to cure the disease, and slowly loses touch with reality. Behind the scenes, the shoot was notoriously tense. Italian and American crews clashed, and Price called it the toughest set he'd ever endured. Yet the result was pure genre gold. George Romero watched this film and knew he had to make Night of the Living Dead. You can draw a direct line from Morgan's grim survival routine to the modern zombie apocalypse playbook. The minimalist score, chilling atmosphere, and sheer loneliness make The Last Man on Earth more than a horror movie. It's a blueprint for every end-of-the-world story since. Fahrenheit 451, 1966. Forget the fire-breathing dragons. Fahrenheit 451 gave us firemen who burn books. François Truffaut's only English-language film transforms Ray Bradbury's classic novel into a color-soaked nightmare about a future where reading is a crime. Oscar Werner plays Montag, the obedient fireman who starts to question everything after meeting a spirited outsider, Clarice, played by Julie Christie, who also doubles as Montag's conformist wife in a brilliant bit of visual storytelling. The opening credits are read aloud, not shown, instantly dropping viewers into a world where even written words are forbidden. Truffaut, communicating through interpreters, filled every frame with tension, using Bernard Herrmann's haunting, percussion-free score to unsettle the audience. On set, the atmosphere was as tense as the plot, with Werner and Truffaut barely speaking and deliberate continuity errors creeping into the final cut. The film's influence spread far beyond cinema, even inspiring a real-world book people movement. Its haunting imagery, inventive structure, and timely warning about conformity and censorship have only become more urgent as the years pass. If you want to see how the 60s imagined the war on information, this is the essential starting point. The Power, 1968. Psychic warfare before it was cool? That's the wild, overlooked genius of The Power. This MGM mindbender takes you into a world where the next step in human evolution isn't spaceships, it's mind control. Scientists at a secret lab discover that one of their own can kill or manipulate just by thinking about it, triggering a deadly game of cat and mouse. Director Byron Haskin, better known for space epics, dials up the paranoia with jarring visuals and surreal, almost dreamlike moments. There are hypnotic hallucinations, weird optical effects, and a haunting score that feels one part spy thriller, one part fever dream. As the scientists drop like flies, our hero races to uncover who holds the true power. The real tension? You never know if what you're seeing is reality or just a psychic trick. George Hamilton, usually typecast as a playboy, is unexpectedly great as the straight arrow lead. Released at the tail end of the decade, The Power quietly set the template for the government conspiracy plus mind games trope. Critics shrugged at its release, missing its influence on films like Scanners, Firestarter, and basically every telekinesis story that came later. If you love the idea of science pushing past its limits and the paranoia of not knowing what's real, this is a deep-cut gem. It's stylish, tense, and a mind trip ahead of its time, a warning shot for the dangers of evolution's next leap. Village of the Damned, 1960. Is there anything scarier than a classroom full of children staring at you in silence? Village of the Damned takes that nightmare and cranks it to 11. When an entire English village blacks out for hours, the women wake up pregnant, and months later, Every child born is ice blonde, eerily calm, and way too smart for their own good. These aren't your average kids. They speak in unison, move in creepy sync, and can force you to do things with just a look. The film is pure suburban dread, all prim hedges and small-town manners twisted into something deeply sinister. George Sanders, master of the deadpan, anchors the story as the scientist desperate to understand or stop the children before they decide humanity is obsolete. Shot in stark black and white, every scene is loaded with tension and unease. The kids' glowing eyes, achieved with simple, practical effects, became one of the most iconic images in sci-fi horror. Village of the Damned didn't just inspire sequels, it seeded entire genres. From The X-Files to Stranger Things, the legacy of those chilling children lives on. This is the film that proved real horror isn't about monsters under the bed. It's about what happens when the next generation becomes completely unknowable. Forget jump scares. This is cold, creeping fear that never lets go. The Time Machine, 1960. Time travel wasn't a blockbuster playground until George Powell's The Time Machine kicked open the doors. Based on H.G. Wells's revolutionary novel, this Technicolor classic follows a Victorian inventor, played by Rod Taylor, who crafts a time machine and launches himself into a far future where humanity has split into two species, the peaceful Eloi and the monstrous Morlocks. The film's time-lapse sequences, showing cities rising and falling, landscapes shifting, and civilizations crumbling, were mind-blowing in 1960 and still look stylish today. Powell's Oscar-winning effects, especially the melting clocks and spinning dials, created the visual language of time travel on film. But it's not just spectacle. The Eloi and Morlocks are more than just good and evil. They're a commentary on class, technology, and what happens when progress leaves compassion behind. The final act, where Taylor's hero fights the Morlocks deep underground, delivers real adventure and genuine chills. The Time Machine inspired a generation of sci-fi fans and filmmakers. Every time machine you've seen on screen, every future dystopia that owes its shape to this film. It wasn't just about special effects. It asked the hard question, if we could see the future, would we actually want to? It's the original ride through time, and it set the standard for all that followed. The Day of the Triffids, 1962. Killer plants sound silly until you've seen The Day of the Triffids. This British sci-fi thriller throws you straight into chaos. A meteor shower blinds most of humanity overnight, and soon, giant walking plants with venomous stingers are roaming the countryside, turning people into prey. What sets this movie apart isn't just the outlandish premise. It's the relentless survival story at its heart. As society collapses, the survivors must dodge both crazed mobs and lurking triffids. The film is packed with images that stick: abandoned cities, sightless crowds stumbling in terror, and monstrous plants creeping ever closer. Based on John Wyndham's best-selling novel, The Day of the Triffids became a cult sensation, influencing everything from zombie films to post-apocalyptic dramas. You can see its DNA in 28 Days Later, The Walking Dead, and any story where the collapse of civilization is as terrifying as the monsters outside. The effects are pure 60s charm, practical puppetry, dramatic lighting, and a score that ratchets up the tension. Critics didn't give it much respect at the time, but fans knew it was special. Decades later, its influence is everywhere. If you want to see where the nature bites back genre really took root, this is the must-see cult classic. These Are the Damned, 1962. Just when you think you've seen every dark corner of Cold War sci-fi, these are the damned steps out of the shadows. Hammer Studios delivers a movie that's part bleak thriller, part psychological study, and all around unsettling. The story follows an American tourist who stumbles into a small English town run by a menacing biker gang. But the real shock comes when he discovers a government facility hiding radioactive children, kids raised apart from the world, bred to survive a nuclear disaster, but doomed to isolation. Director Joseph Losey infuses every frame with an atmosphere of paranoia and doom. Black and white cinematography turns the seaside cliffs into a haunted landscape. The children, pale and desperate for contact, are as tragic as they are chilling. These Are the Damned was ahead of its time, tackling issues like nuclear anxiety, the loss of innocence, and government secrecy with a maturity rarely seen in genre films of the era. The studio didn't know what to do with it, burying it on release, but later, critics hailed it as a lost masterpiece. Its influence is subtle but deep. Echoes can be seen in everything from Village of the Damned to Children of Men. If you want sci-fi that cuts right to the bone, don't let this one stay hidden. So, which of these forgotten sci-fi powerhouses are you tracking down first? Are you all in for Martian survival, psychic warfare, or maybe just ready to face down a killer plant or two? Drop your pick in the comments and let us know which one you think deserves a second life. If you love these deep dives into cinematic history, hit subscribe, share with your fellow movie geeks, and get ready, there's way more where this came from.